Hey everybody, welcome to Brainiac Baseball, Sports Cards, and Gaming. Today we have another edition of I Got This, which is my video series in which I show you things that I've picked up over the last couple weeks or so. And today we have some cards that I picked up off of Mercari. Sometimes I buy cards for my personal collection, and sometimes I purchase other people's collections and sell them on Mercari. And so today's a little bit of both. I picked up, I guess we'll start off with some team checklists from 75 and 76. I've highlighted three of the better ones here. As you can see, they're displayed. I will show you some others before we get to those. I did pick up some 76 cards here. This one is the Texas Rangers team card with Frank Lucchesi. You may remember that this was the year in which Frank Lucchesi got knocked out cold by Lenny Randle before spring training. Randle ended up being moved on to the Mets, I believe, and Frank Lucchesi continued to be the manager throughout the season. This one has a crease in it all the way through, so not a great card as far as condition goes. And these checklists, I knew they weren't going to be in the best possible condition, but I don't have a lot of these in my personal collection, and maybe a couple of these might be worth selling. Here is Walter Alston with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And this team, you can't really tell, but his successor, Tommy Lasorda, is right about in the middle to the right side. And of course, this Dodgers team had a lot of the great Dodgers players to come that will take them to the World Series, like Steve Garvey and Ron Cey. Davey Lopes is on there, and a couple other good players from that era. And then we're looking here at the California Angels with Dick Williams. As manager, he eventually went on to manage the San Diego Padres and take them to the World Series versus my Detroit Tigers. This particular team didn't have a lot of good hitters, but it did have Nolan Ryan and Frank Tandana, that son of a bitch. Also, I believe Bobby Grich was on this team. But so there's your California Angels team checklist. And then we had the Chicago White Sox with Chuck Tanner, who eventually would take the Pittsburgh Pirates to the World Series, and a bunch of has-beens. And there were players on this team that would be part of those power-hitting White Sox teams coming up, but not quite yet. And then the Montreal Expos team checklist here with manager Carl Cool. No, it wasn't pronounced Cool. Was it pronounced Cool? Keel. It was Carl Keel. That's how he was pronounced. And of course, Gary Carter was on this team, but this is the only season that Carl Keel ever actually managed in baseball. And it was the Sad Sacks from Montreal. And then finally, the Minnesota Twins, Gene Mauch, who was on the manager of the Phillies, who had the biggest lead squandered down the playoffs. I believe that was 1961, something like that. But yeah, Gene Mauch managing the Twins. That's all he could manage at that time. And then we have a couple of Yankees 75 team checklists. One is in really terrible shape here, as you can see with Bill Verdon, and a better quality one here. This Yankees team had Thurman Munson on it. And I believe Ron Guidry was No, I don't think Ron Guidry was on this team yet. Well, we can look on the back and find out, can't we? I think Guidry was on this team. No, Larry Gurriel was, and Rudy May, Doc Medich, Scotty McGregor, Dick Tidrow. So there are some, decent names. Lou Piniella, Rookie of the Year, and Munson, and Gene Michael, Greg Nettles, Bobby Bonds. So yeah, there were some decent players, but this would be the year that they got Willie Randolph from the Pirates. So he was not yet on that team. There's the Yankees secondary. I got this 81 Cardinals and a 80 Dodgers, And somehow this Tigers card got thrown in there as well. But the ones I think that matter most here from the checklists is this beat up Big Red Machine Sparky Anderson Reds card from 75. All the good Reds were on this team. Of course, Sparky Anderson went on to manage my Tigers to the World Series in 84, so he managed a team to the World Series victory in the American League and the National League. A great team with all the great Reds. You can just look at all the big names here on the back. Some really good Hall of Famers on there. But this card is in really terrible shape with a tear in the corner. I mean, what are you going to do? I'm not going to cry over that. But I think the best checklist I got was this New York Mets 76 card. I mean, you've got Willie Mays down here in the corner. You got Joe Torre over here on this corner. You have Yogi Berra right in the middle. You got Tom Seaver right about there. I mean, how many great players, former players and current players of this era, can you spot on this team? If you flip it over, I mean, obviously, Willie Mays was not playing for that team in 76, 74, 75 was his last card, I think, 74. But yeah, he was still in that photograph. You see all the great players coming, probably still sticking around from the 69 World Series team. And some newcomers. John Matlack was on that team. And Ed Kranepool still sticking around. Recently passing away. Bud Harrelson. Jesus Alou. So, yeah, I mean, very cool card. And I don't think people really know that, you know, Willie Mays and Joe Torre and Yogi Berra were all on the same card. And I guess to wrap it up is this 76 Detroit Tigers card with Ralph Hoke as their manager. This was before Mark the Bird Fidrych would be on this team. So this card was taken in spring training. Fidrych would come up, and of course his rookie card was 77. But that was the year he started pitching for the Tigers and not represented here. And really probably not a lot of Tigers to get excited about. Maybe Ron LaFleur down here in the corner. Willie Horton still sticking around here on the right side. And Bill Freehan, Mickey Stanley, still in the Tigers then. But yeah, this is pre-Trammell, pre-Whitaker, pre-Morris, and Lance Parrish. But nonetheless, it's still a pretty cool card, and one I actually did not have in my collection. In addition to that, I got this entire stack of 1979 Topps football. And the reason why I bothered to even get these cards, altogether I paid $9 for these. And the only reason I really wanted to get this entire stack of 79 cards is, one, is they were in really great condition. And secondly, for whatever reason, I was 8 years old when these cards came out. My parents were always buying me sports cards. That's how I amassed such a great collection when I was younger. But in 1979, I think my family was going through financial troubles. My dad worked construction. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I did not get a lot of cards that fall and winter for football as I had earlier in my childhood. And so I really am not familiar with a lot of the great cards that were in this collection. I've already picked up some separately, like the Doug Williams rookie card, for example. I already have those in my collection, but this one is a lot of commons, but there's still some Hall of Famers and great cards in here, some decent rookies as well. So there's Charlie Joyner for the San Diego Superchargers. Here's Hall of Famer Fred Dean, defensive end. Later on in his career, I mean, he would go on to play for the 49ers defensively, and I think that's how he really made his mark. Al Bubba Baker, this is his rookie card from my Detroit Lions. Rookie All-Pro, tons of sacks. I think kind of lost to time. If you're not a Detroit Lions fan, you may not remember him, but he was a great defensive lineman. We also have Archie Manning, much later in his career. Papa Manning, I just saw him on the the Manning's Monday Night Football replay of the game. Just a really funny guy. And of course, this card's in great condition. And I really like how terrible the Saints were back then. They were the Aints. Here's the first really good running back for the Buccaneers, Ricky Bell. This is his rookie card. He was a team leader that year in rushing. We can't forget about Randy White for the Cowboys, All-Pro. If you're a Cowboys fan, he's in the Hall of Fame. You know this guy well. A great player during that era. Hey, how about Steve DeBerg? This guy played for a bunch of different teams. This is his rookie card for the 49ers. He was about to become Joe Montana's backup under Bill Walsh's system. Went on to play for several other teams as a quarterback. And, he wasn't always holding the clipboard. This was a time when he was, though. And then we got running back Pete Johnson for the Bengals. He was a team leader at that point. Mike Pruitt, I believe, out of Ohio State University. Running back from the Browns, him and his brother. Tony Galbraith, another good running back of this era. Team leader for the Saints. Robert Brazil, linebacker, Hall of Famer now. Here's his All-Pro card. Very cool. Conrad Dobler, all-around tough guy during this era. Considered a really dirty player. And this is his 79 card. Liddell Mitchell, running back kind of toward the end of his career. He played for the Colts for a really long time back in Baltimore. And a good running back in that era. Chuck Muncie with his sexy specs. I love this card. I love the fact that running backs would wear glasses back then. Chuck Muncie for the Saints. Roger Worley, one of the all-time great cornerbacks of this era. Of course, Topps did not have the rights to the logos, so everything is airbrushed in these cards, which I think is a talent. I mean, some of these look really great considering that there's no logos on them. Then we got some team leader cards. This is the Dolphins kind of going into dormancy as they were waiting for, at this point, Dan Marino to come along in a couple of years. So not a lot of players here that you may recognize. Same to be said for the Bucs. Like I mentioned, there's Ricky Bell and Leroy Selman, who's in the Hall of Fame, leading the team in sacks with 11. Here's the Vikings team leaders with Chuck Foreman, Ahmad Rashad, Bobby Bryant. I think he's the all-time interception leader for the Vikings, if I recall correctly. Mark Mullaney, sack leader. I don't even think they really started counting sacks until about this era. So I think sack leaders are hard to really quantify prior to that. Here's the Cardinals leaders. Jim Otis, running back. I think that his card is in this collection here. Pat Tilley, receiver. Just, it looks weird with those all white helmets. We got Joe Washington leading for the Colts here with Roger Carr, Mark Thompson, John Dutton, sack leader. And then we kind of get into the comments here. We can go through these quickly. Merv Krakow. I mean, this guy was probably 32 years old. He looks like he's in his 50s. Hard living back then. Hey, don't forget about Dexter Bussey. This is a year before Billy Sims got to the Lions, and a decade before Barry Sanders. But Dexter Bussey was the man back then. Good running back for our team. There's Jack Gregory, defensive end. Kicker Rick Danmeyer for the Vikings. Roosevelt Leaks. Sounds like a personal problem. Benny Ricardo. I do kind of remember Benny Ricardo as the kicker for the Lions. Tom Skladany was a rookie as a punter for the Lions that year. He was an all-pro kicker. Ed Taylor, cornerback for the Jets. Scott Perry, safety for the Bengals. Rufus Mays, tackle for the Bengals. I love just looking at these cards. I mean, I don't remember Kevin Long as a running back, but you know what? These guys had a full career back then with not a lot of safety to their gameplay. Tom Deloney, Bob Brodzinski of the Rams, linebacker. Monty Jackson for the Raiders. John Zook For the Cardinals defensive end, I mean, this guy's probably 22 years old, and he looks like he's 70. Larry Keller, linebacker for the Jets. Raymond Chester, good tight end. I think Todd Christensen was about ready to take his job. Pretty close. Tom Blanchard, a punter for the Saints. Luther Blue, wide receiver for the Lions. I think he played like 1 year for us. Ray Wersching, this was the really first good kicker for the 49ers. At least during this era, he kicked for them for such a long time. At this point, well, he was in his third year, I guess. Also kicked for the Chargers. I did not know that. There's Jim Otis, running back. I mean, this guy had shoulders probably like me, but the pads they wore, look at it, made him look really wide. But I don't think that would be the case. Norris Thomas, cornerback. Andy Johnson for the Patriots. Eason Ramson, tight end for the Cardinals. Don Calhoun, there's a good running back for the Patriots during this era. A good running back would get 1,000 yards, right? So when I say good running back, I guess I mean like a 500, 600-yard rusher. I mean, this guy ran for 400 yards that year. Previous high was 727, and that was probably considered elite. And he's probably getting 40 carries a game. There's Frank Reed, a safety for the Falcons. Doug Van Horn, guard for the Gigantes. Bo Harris for the Bengals. We're going to wrap it up with Dan Neal. Centers would get cards in the 70s. It's not like they made, 50 cards per team to represent everybody. But on the Bears, they're like the center. That guy gets a card. Pretty incredible. So that's going to do it for this edition of I Got This. I hope you enjoyed going down memory lane here. For me, this video almost should be called Let's Remember Some Guys. That's really what it comes down to. And that's what I like to do. I like to look back and see who were on these teams that maybe slipped through time. And I appreciate you all turning in for this video. Until next time, everyone, have a great day.